Friday the 13th Part 8 was doomed from the very beginning. The studio had a general concept and an ad campaign, and that was enough to get the film greenlit even without a finished script. Jason was still box office gold despite a slight dip in the numbers for Part 7, but the studio was confident in their idea, and they gambled, hoping that the script issue would just sort of work itself out. The filmmakers were left with a Hollywood screenplay equivalent of a creative writing prompt, essentially write a film where Jason Voorhees goes to the big city. Well, nobody considered the fact that the big city's fucking expensive. They didn't have the budget to make it work, so aside from a few shots in Times Square, most of the film takes place on a boat and on the streets of Vancouver. In this video, I'm going to lay out a detailed idea for what I think would be a better version of Friday the 13th Part 8. To start out, we won't be stacking the deck by imagining a production with a bottomless budget. My new concept will consider the same challenges the original filmmakers confronted, I'll just provide some different solutions. You could still shoot some street scenes in Vancouver, nothing really wrong with that. A dirty back alley is a dirty back alley wherever you go. Certain famous landmarks could be recreated by building physical sets and using age-old practical effects like miniatures and matte paintings to create the illusion of New York City. I don't really think you need to keep much from Part 8 other than the look of Jason. The rest of it can respectfully piss off. I do love Part 8, it's number 4 on my Friday the 13th ranking, but if we have a chance to rewrite history, then sacrifices need to be made. New Part 8 begins at Crystal Lake. The camp's now 20 plus years abandoned and condemned to demolition. After the murders rendered the camp useless and the land with nearly zero monetary value, the entire area was eventually absorbed by the federal government. The film opens on their demo operation. The property's surrounded by machines and workers all over the place as they drain the infamous lake. In the act of stripping the land, the crew eventually makes their way to the old lake bottom where they find Jason's masked corpse entombed in mud. They exhume his cocoon body and quickly transport him to a government laboratory in New York City to examine the remains. Some of the feds think it's Jason, but their superiors remind them that Jason is just a legend, a story they'd tell teenagers to keep them from fornicating in the woods. They all laugh because it just so happens to be Halloween, and it's weirdly funny that something so creepy dropped in their laps on this night of all nights in the year. After cutting Jason from the mud, he of course wakes up and massacres all the lab workers one by one, using many of their own tools against them. A janitor hides as Jason goes berserk, and he watches him take a fire axe off the wall just before he leaves. The terrified janitor then alerts the authorities. Jason makes it outside and wanders into a nearby park. Now, if we're stomping around New York City, we've got to use our time to pay homage to some classic New York City movies. Jason is confronted by police in Riverside Park and turns the tables on them and chases them through the park until finally knocking them all off. One of my favorite films is Walter Hill's The Warriors from 1979, and one of the best scenes of the movie, the baseball Furies chase the Warriors and fight them in Riverside Park. Now, we absolutely need a chase scene in Riverside, or at least a park made to look like it, just to pay a tiny bit of respect to a classic film. We cut to a plainclothes cop duo. They're working on a RICO case, trying to nail some New York City white-collar crime along with some affiliated wise guys. One's an old man, his partner's a woman in her early 40s. She's a Viola Davis type. These two have some great chemistry, very respectful but abrasive dynamic. They're walking the streets, discussing their current case when they get the call. It's a big-time emergency, all hands on deck, multiple cops killed, any and all units available. Our cops, who we'll simply call 1 and 2, are super confused, but they abandon their current mission, they hop in the boat whip and zip over to Jason's last known location. They see a pile of bodies in the park and the carnage is gruesome. They wonder if it's some kind of animal. 1 and 2 track Jason down and have their first confrontation with him on a bridge. Jason's covered in blood, so they pull their guns and tell him to freeze, but he just charges at them. They unload their pistols and Jason just falls over, dropping his axe. He sits up a few seconds later like the Undertaker, jumps to his feet, and retrieves the axe once again. 1 tells 2 to get the trunk cannon. He circles around the car and pulls out a 12-gauge shotgun. He unloads the shells into Jason, who stumbles backwards and falls over the bridge. Jason lands on top of a semi-trailer rooftop. The truck continues on and Jason goes for a little ride with it. Finally, he stands up, but when he does, he hits an overhead sign and is launched off the trailer. Jason bounces a couple of times on the pavement, then after a few seconds pause, he rolls over, stands right back up like nothing happened. Jason turns around and he's lit up by a pair of headlights barreling towards him. It's a big van. It smacks into him and lays Jason out. The car abruptly stops and it's a bunch of stoners. They panic and load Jason's body into the car, and they all argue over what to do. They think it's just some stinky homeless guy, so they pull into a dark alley and kick Jason's body out among some other vagrants. Jason rolls over and stands up once again and just sort of walks out into the middle of the street. He looks up and sees the sign for the American Museum of Natural History. So naturally, Jason goes inside. He wreaks havoc, killing numerous victims and different patrons, using scientific displays, pieces of art, and relics of ancient history. The museum erupts in chaos. Jason's unbothered, but he is interested in the exhibits. He spots a centuries-old katana on loan from Japan, the centerpiece of a samurai exhibit. Jason discards the axe and exits the museum with the Hattori Hanzo sword in tow. Jason makes his way into Central Park, swollen with tourists. We even see a group of recent high school grads in an homage to the the students from the Lazarus. Of course, Jason welcomes them all to New York City with a bit of ruthless mayhem. This causes absolute pandemonium. People scatter in all directions as Jason just stands there and watches them go crazy. 1 and 2 show up and follow Jason into the Central Park Zoo. They find a few dead zoo workers as they search the place, and when they finally locate Jason, he's about to feed the head of the zookeeper to a giant alligator. 1 and 2 yell at him to stop. He just looks at them for a moment, then turns back towards his task at hand. He lowers the dude down, allows the gator to chomp onto his head. Jason lets the scaly predator take the guy away and just turns to leave immediately so the beast can eat in peace. 1 starts to take off her jacket to get in there and save him, but 2 stops her as they both notice a slew of more gators converging on the largest one. They agree to keep going after Jason, who's seemingly teleported away because they can't find him after searching the entire zoo. They report back to their superiors and order choppers in the air to search the entire city, and also a SWAT team armed to the ears with whatever heavy weapons they got. As 1 and 2 take off to search for Jason, we cut to a manhole cover in the street by the zoo. We cut to Jason looking up at the manhole cover from down below. He's in the sewers now, trekking along like a man with a mission. He'll encounter some city workers and take care of them with his usual friendly demeanor, but he's got to come up eventually, right? We won't flood the sewers with toxic waste. No need to cook Jason's face or weirdly transform him into a disfigured child this time around. He'll come up out of the sewers, pop the manhole cover off, and end up right in front of Madison Square Garden. The Knicks are playing the Hawks, so Jason goes inside to get a piece of the primetime NBA action. He blows by security, and when they try to physically stop him, he dispatches them with a simple swipe of the katana each. Most of the fans inside are oblivious to Jason. The majority just think it's a Halloween costume. Many people in Madison Square Garden are dressed up for the holiday, so Jason fits right in. Jason makes his way through the stadium, eventually finding a door to the backside corridor meant for event staff only. He's confronted by another group of security guards who try their best to take him down, but in the end he eats their lunch. Only 1 is smart enough to run away. He goes right to the phone and tearfully calls for backup. 1 and 2 get the alert. All units, the SWAT team included, surround the stadium and swarm inside. They systematically check all the surrounding hallways and stairwells, unable to get eyes on Jason anywhere. They move into the packed arena and finally spot Jason emerging from one of the tunnels into the locker rooms. He marches toward the game, his eyes dead set on center court, only to be stopped by the biggest and baddest of arena security. Jason dukes it out with these 3 jabronis, and although he has to work for this one, he drags the fight out onto the court and kills the trio in front of the massive crowd. It's absolute chaos as the fans flee for their lives. The SWAT team swerves their way through the riot and forms a solid perimeter around Jason. They order him to drop the sword or they'll light him up. 1 and 2 show up. They tell the SWAT guy that bullets won't do it. The SWAT leader doesn't listen. He thinks 1 and 2 are fools. They open fire on Jason and don't stop until their clips are empty. Jason falls to the ground, his body shredded but still fully intact. The SWAT team reloads their weapons and prepare to secure the neutralized target. But the target isn't neutralized at all. Actually, he's very much alive because Jason stands up. The SWAT leader, for some foolish but amazing reason, ordered his team to move in. Here we get our own version of The Bride versus the Crazy 88, only this time it's Jason Voorhees and like 25 to 30 cops. As 1 and 2 watch Jason dice through them, whipping them around, slamming them into each other, bulldozing them over like a bully on the playground, they plead with the SWAT leader to call the team back before they're all dead. The leader's essentially catatonic and shocked from the sea of carnage before him. 1 and 2 take over. They pick up some of the dropped assault rifles and order everyone to shoot the cables of the Jumbotron. What's left of the SWAT team scatters away from Jason as 1 and 2 and the rest of the officers unload their clips into the rafters. In classic movie fashion, everything works out perfectly and the Jumbotron falls down, smashing Jason and ending his rampage. Although I seemingly described a lot just now, I really don't think my ideas are anything special. They're actually quite simple because these stories really don't need to be so difficult. Like I said before, you could use plenty of different practical effects methods to recreate New York City. You could shoot in cheaper locations and similar structures and just tell the audience through the film that this is New York City. Nobody looks to Jason movies for realism or on-location specificity. We've suspended our disbelief as horror fans time and time again. I think audiences would easily do that here. The Jason tale that I've just told has more in common with movies like King Kong or Godzilla than it does with most slasher films. The mythology of Jason is mostly irrelevant to what's happening. Nobody in the city has any idea who or what Jason is, so they have no idea how to defeat him. Now when it comes down to all these different locations of Jason's destruction, we may need to move some things around to make Jason's movements actually make geographical sense. Now I'm no New York City tour guide, but logistics like that aren't make or break details. If the movie has to be called Jason Takes Manhattan, then damn it, Jason needs to take a bite out of the Big Apple, even if it's a fake one created by Cinema Magic. Despite making a video saying it should be fixed, I really do love Friday the 13th Part 8. I know it's weird and ridiculous. It's also very charming exciting and entertaining in its own derpy sort of way. Thanks for sticking around if you made it this far. Did you like my ideas for fixing Friday Part 8, or do you think they're absolute trash? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay safe out there.